Hi, I'm Dan, 36, gay, married, and welcome back to my video dissertation on the show that has me in an absolute chokehold and won't let me go. Heated Rivalry. In this series, we are going to go episode by episode through season 1 and discuss character development, moments that broke me, those that healed me, and the incredible tiny nuances that made me fall hard for this version of queer love. If you are new here, maybe episode 2. Hey, jumping in here quick. Just wanted to give a quick disclaimer. I posted my jump cut video of rewatching episode 2, and there were a lot of comments about me missing context around some of the things that we see at the end of the episode, especially from Ilya's point of view. I did mention this in my intro video to this series, but I have not said it on these other videos. I have not read the books. I have not explored any of the rest of the Rachel Reed world, like her website and stuff. I'm going to be basically reacting to the show as its own unique piece of art, focusing on cinematography, the acting, and the external dialogue. I know there's a bunch of internal dialogue and other pieces that you get, obviously, when you're reading the book or consuming other content. But I did this on purpose because I wanted to really have an unbiased reaction to the show. Now, that being said, I have all of the intentions of going back and reading the books, doing all that sort of stuff. I've ordered them. They're on their way. But I wanted to finish out this series kind of unbiased. And I know many of you have been here from like the beginning. You have so much more context. You have a different relationship with these characters than I do at this point in time. Was catching some smoke for some of my opinions on Ilya's behavior on the back half of this, and hopefully hearing my deep dive on those things gives more context, but B, just to let you know, like by the end of this season, Ilya is one of my favorite, if not my favorite character. So yeah, just wanted to jump on and start that here. If you are looking for a deep dive that has all of that additional context, I won't be able to give you that today. Who knows? Maybe at the end of this, I'll make a couple other videos around the things that I learned from the book and the other world components, and maybe retract some of these statements. Who knows? But for today, we're going to dive into episode 2. You are new here. Maybe episode 2 is your favorite. Hey, hope you have a therapist because this episode was something. But if you're back for another deep dive and you've already watched episode 1 recap and kind of my intro video, how are things going? Are we liking this style of content? Do we like the length? I know I had a ton of comments on my first video where I just briefly mentioned that I had like 4+ hours of footage that I was trying to cut down. And so many of you were like, dude, send it. We don't need an edit. Give us the 4 hours. I can tell you, if you've seen episode 1, I got it down to 2 hours. And I think you're going to be glad that the other 2 hours don't exist. A lot of ums and sitting in thought. But with that being said, we are going to dive into episode 2, which is entitled Olympians. I think it's fairly obvious for us to understand why it is named that way, because they're going to the Olympics. Just like we did in my last video, I'm going to take this episode and kind of break it into what I consider to be the big kind of milestones or chunks. And you'll see in the upper right-hand corner the timestamp for this segment I'm talking about. I did notice that I'm using the timestamps from HBO Max on YouTube. I did pull up HBO Max on my TV the other day just to see. They're a couple seconds off, but you'll have a general sense of where we're at. And the key segments for episode 2 for me were the rebuild up, finally, the thing we've been waiting for in Montreal, obviously the Olympics, a detour to Russia, and another failed awards night. Also, you may notice that I'm in a different jersey. I was traveling for work last week, and we had a big meeting out in Boston, and the corporate event for all of us was actually going to the Bruins game. I know it's not a Raiders jersey, same city, generally, in the same color palette. So I had to pull the trigger. Okay, diving in. The last shot that we got in episode 1 was of Shane leaving Ilya on the rooftop at the award show. And I think it's fairly clear to say that our boys are not doing very well in terms of trying to build something, which hopefully is a relationship. We see them in the summer of 2011 with a view of them running. As we zoom through these years with them to get to the later episodes, this shot of them running outside is like the signifier for summertime, according to Heated Rivalry. And we get a little spark of hope. I started the episode with my neck brace like next to me on the couch because these boys they're hurting me. But then, and we see them both kind of smiling from ear to ear, just from like interacting with one another, even if it's just over the phone. So we've got a little glimpse of hope that they're still into each other, and maybe this will continue to blossom. Summer's over. We're now in fall of 2011, and we've got our first matchup between Ilya and Shane on the ice. And this is where, on rewatching, I'm a little confused. So if you guys have read the books or you know more about the lore than I do, we see them texting back and forth. Obviously, they were at the rink together playing one another, which means there would have been an opportunity for them to get together, but we don't get any indication that they actually do. And so then we see this like, hey, what's a lonely girl in Montreal supposed to do? Text from Ilya, but then it doesn't appear that Shane responds. And then we get our next timeline jump to the winter of 2012. So I'm just going to assume they didn't end up meeting up. We then get a parallel shot to one that we saw last episode. That was the scene that ruined everything, and I still don't get why. But we've got Shane sitting in the airport, similar kind of vibe as to Ilya when he was flying to Montreal with the team, but their flight got canceled. This time now, we've got Shane sitting in the airport flying to Boston to go play, and we get a little like flirty text from Ilya saying, do you want to come while you're in Boston? And when Shane first reads it, it's like you can tell it seems like he's trying to decide whether or not he wants to respond. But he gives in and then, clearly doesn't really get what Ilya was suggesting and tries to make fun of him and says, did you use Google Translate? This makes no sense. And our little mischievous Ilya, just sitting at his kitchen island, is got this big smirk and is like, read it again. And Shane takes his phone and like kind of hides it as if, anyone was actually reading a screen, whatever. But right behind him at the ticket counter is a priest, which I thought was a funny choice of like, you're kind of like sexting with with a person. And there's a priest right behind you. The Lord is always watching. We then cut to Shane's family room, living room. He's watching Ilya's game on the TV, and we see something that I mentioned in episode 1 that was almost like a little bit of foreshadowing for me. And you see now, having rewatched it, we see Shane sitting on the couch, smiling ear to ear. These boys are texting back and forth and, flirting, and he's got the string of his hoodie in his mouth. And that, to me, was a callback to when Ilya was in the stands watching Shane early on, kind of like in all dark, but he also had the string in his mouth. And we immediately then cut to Ilya in the locker room having just finished the game, and he's smiling back at his phone, and he's got now his necklace in his mouth. And I was trying to think of the comparison between obviously this scene and that scene in episode 1, where this choice may then indicate that Ilya was really into Shane all the way back then, and that maybe Shane wasn't or didn't have even the starting of words to describe it, or just wasn't giving into that feeling at all. Because when we contrast them in the stands, Shane was positioned almost in a very uncomfortable stance. Like, I don't even know what he was doing, and had a very, like, serious, like, analytical look on his face, kind of as if he was just watching Shane as a competitor and not someone that he, thought was cute or was interested in. And we get a little callback to like what they were supposed to do in Montreal last time. And we get Ilya texting Shane, do you promise? Can read the rest of the text. And it's almost like the through line from when we saw them last episode in the hotel room next to Scott, and they decided not to move forward with the activity. And Ilya says, okay, well, next time. And Shane just like wells up and is, so excited. This is almost, you could potentially interpret this as, Shane says, I'll see you next year. And Ilya takes that and, says, promise. A potential through line from previously, that maybe now it's Shane is a bit more in the driver's seat and Ilya is not fully in control of his destiny with Shane. And by Shane not responding to that, I think he is taking back some of the power because of the things that we saw at, the second half of last episode. We're jumping again. Fall 2012. We see Shane and Hayden hanging out in their hotel room, and our boy Shane gets a text from Lily with just like an address, and Shane's like, what is this? And I just double checked. The last text that they had between the two of them was the one that Shane had not responded to. So they really are not communicating that much. And Ilya says, the place where you can get what you want, which the last text you guys exchanged, it was Ilya saying that he wanted something. And so Shane's like, what do I want? And he gets a photo, which I guess it's HBO, but I was like, can you show that on TV? I mean, it just caught me by surprise, and clearly caught Shane by surprise, because we get this comical reaction of like shock, slam the phone down, and Hayden's just like, I mean, at this point, they've been friends for so long, and he knows that Shane is who he is, our neurodivergent king. And I just love that, like, you good? What was all that? We now jump to the winter of 2013. I mean, I've heard from other people too that the timeline jumping was hard to keep track of if you like hadn't read the books and gotten any other context. But I think in what we just saw on Shane's phone, if they haven't actually texted, then they really just have been like silently wanting each other, and so really there wouldn't be much for us to see anyways. And we've got Shaney with these socks. I know that there are people out there that do be loving those tall socks. It's like either they are, for me, like soccer socks or riding socks that go to your knee, or they're no-show socks. I don't do this in between stuff, but I'm gonna call it his comfort blanket, so we'll let him be. The flirtatious texts continue. We have Ilya getting creative with the ways he's trying to like bait Shane into texting him back, even if it is just an inquiry of like, what are you talking about? So we get this reference to 9 goals and 9 other things. But again, we don't get a response from Shane, but that doesn't seem to bother Ilya. It's like the next shot we see him working out, and it's like he knows that by sending that text, he's getting in his head or getting Shane, flustered at the very least. And we get this shot of, him on a bike watching an ad that Shane's on. And this shot in particular, which is at like 3:53, it's almost like this now signifies a shift from Ilya knowing that he basically could just get Shane to do whatever he wanted. To me, it read like a directorial choice to visually communicate that Ilya is now in a position where he has to work to get to Shane. Like Shane is his goal. You know, like when you're working out, you're trying to achieve something, and he's on this bike and just staring ahead, and it's like he is shifted from being able to just like text Shane or touch Shane and have him kind of just melt immediately into Ilya. And that now that he's getting a little iced out, it's like probably a mixture of like the chase of it all. We know professional athletes, like by design, are competitive people, and it doesn't really appear that Ilya gets told no or doesn't have people jumping to text him back or do what he wants outside of his family, who is a disaster. But that maybe this is the seedling of him understanding he has to take a different approach if he really wants something with Shane. We're now in the spring of 2013, and we get another text from Ilya to Shane. And I just like the long game here is insane to me. Like Ilya says, if Boston wins this round, I get to you next fall. It's like we are in the spring. Why? I mean, I get that you're on the road all the time and that you only play each other so much, but you could like get on a plane or go to a near city when they're playing or something. Like, but I guess then it's showing too much initiative. I don't know. All I know is that they come off, if you're not paying attention to the timeline jumping, that they're obsessed with their phones and texting back and forth and checking to see if the other texted the other one back. And like, no joke, hundreds of texts a day when my husband and I met. Like, it was nonstop all day, every day, back and forth. Like, almost no work was getting done at that point. And within like a very short time period, I was like, are we like, is this official? What is this? And at one point I just like threw a sweatshirt at him, and that just had, I guess it was kind of like a jersey, but I had put like boyfriend on the back of a sweatshirt, and I just like walked in the room and I threw it at him and I said, whenever you want to buck up and make this official, like, let's go. And I can tell you that the same person who does that is not the same person who texts infrequently for literally years and makes plans 6-9 months in advance, and not even plans, like hopeful plans to hook up with someone. Like I'm happy for them, but this is not edging. Like traditional edging would be running a 5K, and what they're doing is like ultra marathon insanity. It's not for me. And even in that moment, then Shane chooses not to respond. Later, I'm assuming that night, then we see him actually responding back, asking, well, okay, hey, what if I win? And we get, responding with same thing, indicating that I know that you want this as much as I do, or equally as much as I do, and throws a little, kiss emoji at the end. And this is where, again, we get this like balanced, like very overt texting with this like flirtatious edge that I think, if, again, going back to something I harped on in episode 1 and will continue to talk about as a major theme, if he had been the archetypal top Russian athlete trope, I think he would have lost Shane a long, long, long time ago. Like, he wouldn't have been able to keep his interest, or, as we see, like, make him feel safe enough to actually engage in any of these sorts of things. And so these little things like the kissing emoji, I think, help soften him, which helps, I think, keep Shane interested. And also, when you're texting, I mean, I rely heavily on emojis and punctuation to ensure that the way I mean a text to come across, it comes across that way because obviously you don't have any of the social cues. And so maybe that's also part of it is like, yeah, I'm sending you something a little bit more on the overt side, but by adding the emoji, it kind of helps like show that it's, not just that he's interested in. I don't know. All right, 4 minutes in. Holy shit. And we've been filming for 43 minutes. Okay. I love that some of these characters that they bring in are just meant to be ways for us to get like, how do I even put this? It's almost like they're toying with us in this scene where it's like you have Shane, even if he's not showing it, struggling with like, what do I do about this thing with Ilya? It fell apart, went to shit last episode. We're infrequently texting and whatever, but I think we're going to see them play again tonight. So it's like this, I'm sure, groundswell of like, do I, don't I, this time, I don't know. And then we have these two like court jesters that are side characters that come in. And we've got one of his teammates that's like, if Rosanov fucks you tonight, I'm going to fuck him back. And Shane is clearly like taken aback because. And our buddy Hayden kind of is like, I don't think that's how you mean that. And then we've got another one of his teammates who is in a position that now, thanks to going to hockey games and also watching Hudson on Jimmy Fallon, we know is like a regular stretch that a lot of these hockey players do. But it's this so on the nose comedy that was just hilarious that they have these two people, one saying what he's saying and one in a certain position. We get someone from the team coming in and asking Shane if he'll go talk to the press. They've got some questions, and Hayden does this like joking role play, and we see Shane almost like poke fun at himself. In episode 1, we have that scene where Ilya is sitting on the bed watching Shane do that interview in French where they're asking him about, Tiger Woods and Serena Williams and stuff. And he's like, oh, so perfect. And so as Shane's kind of joking back and forth with Hayden, he starts off with like, well, hockey is a complicated and nuanced game, giving that like, here's my radio answer, here's my, golden boy answer that I'm going to probably go out and give. And then he follows it up with, but it would be helpful if we scored more fucking goals, right? Where like we get our first sense that maybe that's how he actually thinks. He's just good at putting on the golden boy of it all. And it's like maybe again, rewatching, because the first 1 or 2 times through, most of these like small things made their way past me without, any thought. And again, we get a really cool song choice from an artist that I've never heard of throughout this first rebuild up sequence. That is, and I'm going to butcher this, not a surprise. It's a song by an artist called Wet Leg. That's called Mange Tout. I don't know. But it's just quietly kind of playing in the background throughout these scenes. And some of the lyrics, you think I'm pretty, you wanna me. I know most people do. Oh man, I hope you're going to get out soon. I really hope you're going to get out soon. You're standing in my light. And we get this like get lost forever repeating. And it feels like it's coming from Shane's side of the house, that he's like, I thought this might be something or could be something or would have led to something. But the way that you treated me, especially at the MLH Awards, like I'm going to try to keep declining your advances despite you continuously trying to get my attention. We cut to them again playing against one another. They are now in Montreal, and as they're in the locker room getting ready, Ilya starts with the texts, I think trying to get Shane a little riled up, seemingly hoping that this will finally be the day for them to take things to the next level. And we see Shane begin to write out a text He erases it, and we have this view of Ilya just looking down at his phone and seeing the ... and clearly just waiting. We get another version of the text that doesn't end up getting sent, and then we get the one that he lands on to actually send. And in that very short time frame, we can see Shane go from reactionary and angry caps and, exclamation marks of like, what are you doing? We're about to go play a game, to are you trying to mess with me? Right? Like, is this just a tactic? So like mad to worried, like to like, are you trying to mess with me? I don't like, what are we doing here? And then to him answering the question honestly and in the most Shane way. And we've somehow eroded this like steel wall of, I'm not going to respond to you. I'm not going to do this. And by giving in, he's kind of feeling the feelings again with Ilya. And we see Ilya just like glued to his phone, giant grin on his face. And he gives Shane a little bit of shit. And almost then we reach the next, devolution is not a word, regression. Or no, it's not a regression. The next internal layer of then the fear of like, I was honest, okay, but who taught you that word? Now it's like jealousy's strong, but it's like, am I about to get hurt again? Am I just going to be used in this situation for him? And we get a your mother joke, and Ilya asks, where are we meeting? Shane types out, we're not. F you. Feeling that he got a little too close to like falling back in. And we get a little crying emoji from Ilya, and another callback to episode 1 where we have this if you're lucky rhetoric. And he says, if you're lucky, I'll text you after the game. And before he can even like put his phone back in the locker, this is again, Ilya is like on that keyboard, and Ilya is showing, what's the PG way of saying this? He is informing in a yearning type way, Shane, that he is looking forward to meeting up after the game. And we then cut to the Boston locker room, and we get one of my favorite Ilya lines. One of his, I almost said coworker, teammates sees him just like glued to his phone, smiling, texting, and says, wow, this Montreal girl really works you up, brother. And Ilya's like, shut your idiot face, Marley. And then he goes, you're straight up blushing. And then we get, I love that. We fast forward to the end of the game because none of us care about the game that's happening. Get to, are they going to finally figure it out? And we see that Montreal won 4-3, and we jump cut to the next segment of this episode, which is finally. We see Ilya walking down an alleyway because clearly Shane is concerned about him going through the front door. They are, as he made clear last episode, he lives in a condo building, so there's going to be people there. He can't be seen, blah, blah, blah. And he just like busts out this like back door, and Ilya just goes, you will murder me. Like, what big, strong Russian man who's not scared of anything, and you're scared of this guy who, he like genuinely looks nervous. It's like, what is Shane going to do to you? Oh, buddy. And assuming that dominant role, Shane says, maybe. Now get in. At this point, I did kind of like reach back over for my neck brace. Like, we're seeing a lot of ebbs and flows, which I think actually is really a huge positive of the show. And that neither Ilya or Shane are staying in the predefined lane that they started with at the top of episode 1. Despite, I guess, being concerned he's going to get murdered, Ilya walks into the stairwell with Shane, and Shane now he's taking charge. He's not going to be pushed around. He's not going to melt into you anymore, Ilya. He is trying to assert his dominance in this situation. And he kind of like throws Ilya up against the wall and is like, why the hell did you think it was okay to text me that stuff before the game? Like, and if you watch Ilya, I'm assuming this wasn't something that they like cut Ilya's audio out, but if you look at Ilya's mouth, he's like, oh my God. Shane is throwing him against the wall and yelling at him for texting him things of that nature before the game. And even though Shane thought he really was doing something with that, almost immediately, Ilya is able to take the reins back and is like, well, was it effective for the whole game? And Shane does his thing. He's like, you're such an asshole, and starts like stomping up the stairs. And I think at this moment, Ilya knows that that guy he almost had back in episode 1 is still there and is still interested, despite what his actions may have tried to portray. And he just says, you missed me, didn't you? And we get, again, this like hilariously comical competition between them where they then start like trying to race each other up the stairs. A callback to racing each other on stationary bikes. It's like, are you 9-year-old boys? Like, it's hilarious to me. And maybe it's like meant to represent a more lighthearted rivalry between them, or that maybe it's like they are both trying to vie for the dominant spot in this chaotic thing that they have going on. But it's just funny to watch, 20-year-old men try and race each other up the stairs, which you're racing each other up the stairs to then, like, I don't know. We then get upstairs to Shane's condo, and we see our good old regimented king again, thinking ahead, investments. I bought it a couple years ago, bought the place next door, but I'm renting it out right now instead of, whatever. And there's a future that I could, bust it open and blah, 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 blah. And we get our first foot choreo for episode 2. I mentioned in my review of episode 1 the gym scene where they're almost about to touch feet, and then the press conference where they are reassuring each other under the table with these small gestures with their feet. And we'll see one of, I think, the most powerful scenes for me in the whole series so far in episode 6 that also is along this line. But we see a shot down the hallway into the kitchen where both Ilya and Shane are mirroring one another. And while they're leaning on different surfaces and they're distanced from one another, they are both standing with like their feet one in front of the other, both aimed at one another and seemingly filling a good amount of the space between them as like the small nuanced gesture of like, I want to be close to you. I have wanted to be close to you since the last time we were together, but I don't trust you yet. I'm not going to run in and, give you a big hug or give you a kiss or any of that. It's like, this is the first step to like, am I going to trust you in this moment? And we have a pregnant pause, and we see Ilya come into frame with Shane, and he goes and kisses him. This time we actually have Shane reaching up to Ilya's face in some of those like tender moments that we talked about in episode 1. And Ilya's line kind of doesn't break the tenderness, but no, it does. It sort of breaks the tenderness. Like, you guys have not been together or able to like do any of these things for forever. And even with their first and second times together in the hotels, there have been these like sweetly intimate moments before they get to the act. And Ilya just goes, well, where do you want me? And it's like on the kitchen, on the floor, which, while still breaking a bit of the tenderness, is demonstrating his want and willingness to almost take a little bit more of, again, that like backseat role, that less dominant role. And you can tell it kind of like takes Shane a little bit out of it. And he just takes his hand off and, says, fuck you. For me, signifying that he had really hoped that, I don't know, that maybe Ilya had learned his lesson and that this wasn't just about hooking up. And I don't know if it's like a defense mechanism or if really that's what Ilya was only wanting or focused on at that time. But given the distance, given the chaos, given all the signals he was getting from Shane, it was a choice to kind of kick off this meetup that way. We then have Shane bringing Ilya upstairs to his bedroom, not the kitchen or the floor. And Ilya just looks at the bed and said, did your mom buy you all these pillows? And there's a bunch of decorative pillows, which I called out in episode 1. There were decorative pillows on the hotel bed, and you can see him just like chuck it off the bed. So clearly he's not a fan or doesn't appreciate the design element of a decorative pillow, I guess. Also leaving no opportunity to give Shane a little bit of shit. Shane says, no, I hired a designer, which has 2 prongs for me. One is he is assuming what we've heard from the writer and other people in the cast. Shane is meant to be on the spectrum. And so the things that maybe someone not on the spectrum would enjoy doing, like designing their place or doing things like that, outsourcing those sorts of things to folks that are experts in that is logical. And so there's potentially that avenue. The other is we have a similar conversation that Shane is a little bit hesitant to even bring up with Ilya in a future episode. And I was wondering if that is because of this moment, or maybe it totally wasn't. It just was something that stood out. And Ilya just looks back at him and goes, you think there is enough? He is really locked and loaded in his Ilya lane at this point. Of course, typical response, Shane's like, you're such an asshole. He's standing there with, his thumbs in his pockets, just smiling and not knowing what to do from here. And we get Ilya responding with, I think you like it. And I would agree. I think Shane does like it in these playful moments. When it goes a little too far, I think it's very obvious that Shane recoils from that and it's hurtful to him. But I do think that in these moments, he does. Never to let an anti-smoking campaign moment pass, he says, I can smell the cigarettes from here. As if they're like a married couple and Shane's been on his case to quit. He's like, I only had one, which is not the vibe that we've been getting from Ilya, right? Like it's more of, you would have expected him to have like, I'll do what I want energy. And Shane's like, you shouldn't be smoking, obviously just thinking about his overall health. And we get a little ping pong back at him and it's like, well, you shouldn't be talking. So Ilya is going to take the reins. And again, we get this signal that while they're both trying to be dominant in this situation by telling each other to, no, you come here. As they're saying that, they are both walking towards one another. And it just, re-solidifies that deep down, even though there's been some BS, they really do want each other. We then get to what they've been hoping to do. We get, again, this kind of tender consent-like language from Ilya where he wants to make sure, Shane's comfortable. He's like, you still want? And Shane responds back with, I still want. And he says it back to him in this, like, not traditionally structured not sentence, I guess. I think to show that, like, he wants to meet Ilya where he is. And then we get one of the most brilliant song choices with Peter Peters' It's You. Obviously, they have had a ton of ups and downs over the multi-year situationship or whatever that they've had. And as I talked about in episode 1, it felt like we had finally built to a crescendo point where we could have had this moment that is not just them taking their physical intimacy to the next level, but almost like getting that out of the way so that they can have room for the emotional component to whatever's going on. And I was legit worried going into this scene, especially given the statement that Ilya made in the kitchen and the text threads and all of that. It, very much focused on, it's not that I want to be with you. It's like, I want to you. And right as they're like getting ready to take this next step together, this song comes on, and it's like I could feel my shoulders like release a bit. And my God. And right as they're getting started, we get the line in the song, "Where were you?" And Shane's in frame, and so I think that probably is influencing my interpretation, but it feels like this is meant to indicate like Shane's always wanted Ilya. Shane always wanted Ilya to show up in these ways that he does when they're alone and together. And when you're someone who, again, is potentially on the spectrum, like you lose some of those social cues and those things that make life a little bit easier for those not on the spectrum to understand that, oh, maybe Ilya was an asshole, like an actual asshole at the MLH Awards last year because he was worried about going home and figuring, out shit with his family and his dad, and that the emotion Shane was met with, or the letdown from Shane's perspective that Ilya did by not being present for him, has nothing to do with him. And that in these moments, he sees the man he loves and is wondering, where was this person? Where was this person? And it's kind of genius to pair this super comforting and beautiful song with the imagery, and it really helps convert something like this that could be portrayed in a very like smutty way as a much more like beautiful moment for these two people. And we get followed up by, "Where were you?" The lyrics saying, "Please don't go." Like, this is, please don't let this moment end and that person retreat or retract or disappear. Like, can this be finally the thing that tips us over to the other side of this chaos? And the next lyric is, "Stay right here." Like, from "Where were you? Please don't go. Stay right here." And we get, again, this like beautiful shot of their faces, and we have Ilya again making sure, checking in on Shane. "Is this okay? Are you good?" The next lyric is, "Don't ever leave." And compared to the interaction that we saw in Vegas, which was cold and sterile and transactional, they can't keep their mouths off each other. They are clearly both like on the same page and locked in. And we get our first name break. I mentioned in episode 1 that their name choices for one another is kind of my litmus test for how close we are. Because if it's last names only, that's kind of how the outside world talks about them. If it's first and last name, we're getting closer. First name only, even closer. And in this moment, we get a nickname for Ilya, which is Rosie. And I mentioned this in episode 1, but the play on traditionally masculine and feminine verbiage, like Ilya calling Shane pretty in the commercial shoot and things like that. This, although clearly spelt differently, Rosie is reminiscent of a rose and something that is beautiful and whatever. So instead of in that moment, Shane choosing to call him Ilya, which again, on the spectrum of like close to not close, would be, you know, closer than a lot of the times when they speak to one another. It was interesting to choose this nickname and have it be something that is, again, breaking some of these masculine, feminine boundaries in a hinted way. Again, we have the Ilya that I love. I was very mad at him at the end of last episode, but he's again checking in, making sure his baby boy is okay. And as the scene progresses and the song progresses, we just get this repetitive lyric of "It's you." Like this is my person. And it's been a wild ride and a long ass ride to get here, but they've somehow found a way to meet each other in this moment in a way that fits beautifully and perfectly for the two of them. And the last main lyric that we hear is, "What the hell are you?" In this like post "it's you" moment of I've had this realization. It's like, what? You are so different and amazing and otherworldly almost to me, in that I think they both never thought this would happen. This would feel the way it did. This would be the way it was. That, there's a potential that they were never going to even find someone they were comfortable enough, like having this level of intimacy with. Obviously, Ilya, had hooked up with Sasha in the past, but that song was just like an absolutely incredible choice. And I think Peter was he was the composer. And so this is an original song by him, absolutely 100 out of 10. It really, really shifted the narrative for me and actually made me feel, as a viewer that's obviously invested in these two guys' stories, safe, that this wasn't going to magically combust, that we, at least for the time being in this setting, this scene, can feel safe in wanting for their love and for them to succeed. The other thing that I appreciated in the way that they told the story of Shane and Ilya is that it very much, based on what we heard in episode 1, they both feel very comfortable in what they like in terms of positions and things. And it wasn't this, again, archetypal narrative of like, well, who's the one who's gonna versus whatever. And that in this portrayal of this moment, it's clear they both are very much enjoying the encounter in the way that they are. And that just because Shane is a professional hockey player and a guy, that he needs to either pretend that he doesn't like the position he was in, or there doesn't have to be like a power struggle of like, well, who's doing that tonight? It's like they have found each other and they're both totally confident in the roles that they, as a couple, well, as a situationship, hopefully evolving into something else, both enjoy. And I really appreciated that storytelling, again, in this through line of helping me in my brain dismantle some of the like homophobic lenses that we're so used to putting on these characters of like, well, of course, macho Russian guy is just going to be like, bleh, do this. Or that two male athletes, would be rock, paper, scissoring over who's the catcher versus whatever. So, and in this like glow of having this experience, and still with Ilya like loving on Shane, Shane's like, well, now the bed's all dirty. It's like, yes, it is, Shane. And almost to like try and keep Shane in the moment or help Ilya stay in this moment. Again, thinking to the song choice that was made, like, stay right here. It's you. It's like, what? shut up. Like we just we're having this amazing moment. Like, who cares? You can wash your freaking sheets, bro. And the song comes back in, and we're now on the "Please Don't Go" lyrics, and and in again a parallel to the very first time that they had gotten together, and Ilya kind of was like, "I'm gonna go." Ended up faking us out with that, but he almost asks for permission to go shower. It's like, "I'm gonna go shower now, okay?" And they kiss each other. It's like it's such a cringy way to put it, but like they obviously made love. This was not just a hookup. And even the choice to have the fireplace on in the background helps again with that narrative, that it's more of like we were setting the mood for something that wasn't just a hookup on a dirty bathroom floor, right? And then right as we hear the shower turn on, the song lyric is "Stay right here." And we have a solo shot of Shane on the bed, and he just kind of like puts his arm up on his face. And it's in that lyric earlier, I think, was more of like them two, like you as the other person, stay right here. And in this, it gave me more of like for Shane, like stay in this moment, enjoy this, don't go immediately back to the thoughts of the outside world. Just like enjoy and embrace all of the neurochemicals that you have rushing through your body right now, because you like deserve to relish in this moment that you were bold enough to take a chance on, even though you were hurt by him previously, and that you are taking the risk that I think he thought he never would, had Ilya not initiated, back in the gym. Ilya comes back from the shower and says, "You killed me, Hollander. I am dead." And Shane responds that was so hot, and almost starting to like snap back into Ilya, jokingly is like, "Was it worth the wait?" And Shane just kind of puts his hand on Ilya's jaw and like nuzzles him and kisses him. And right as their lips touch, again, we get another "It's you" from the lyrics in the background. And Shane kisses his forehead, and we see Ilya looking up at him, and Shane starts kind of like caressing his neck. And there's a look on Ilya's face that almost feels like it's like we are too close to the edge. And that edge being actually unlocking that like next level, or acknowledging probably the next level of feelings that he has for Shane. And it is so clear that Shane is there right now, because he's been wanting it the whole time. And in a almost reverse role scenario, Ilya is the one that's panicking a little bit here. And he says, "I should go." And they were just having such a beautiful, intimate moment. And I think it just was too much, too scary for Ilya. And Shane just kind of turns and nods and takes his hand off of his chest, and not in like overtly mad way, but you can tell that he's disappointed, that at the very least he wanted to stay again in that moment a little longer. And then we cut to the stairwell, which I was telepathically threatening the show that if we end this wrong, I'm going to be really mad, like really mad, because I needed this to heal from the BS that we had in episode 1. And it totally delivered, even with the lines being what they were. And I'm like 99% sure I read that the kiss here was improvised. Shane is in his hoodie, cuddled up on the stair, hugging Ilya's coat as Ilya's getting ready to go. And again, we get Shane, I think he's trying to relate to Ilya, and he's trying to evolve their spectrum of conversation beyond hockey and them, and is inquisitive about Ilya's family. They're about to go to the Olympics, and he's saying, I bet they're happy that they're in Russia. I bet they're going to come. And again, we hear his dad might come, his brother might come. And it's like he's yearning for a deeper connection. He wants to know more about Ilya. They're still, again, giving each other shit, but it's clearly playful. And Ilya is just looking at Shane, and he's just sitting there, curled up, hugging his coat. And that must be an image that, is seared into Ilya's brain. Like this guy, I won't admit it to myself, but what a perfect match for me. And how adorable this guy is, and how much he adores me. And it's like he, again, has to just keep like making jokes to not, I guess, let it fall to the next level. And even as he goes to take the coat and, calls him a nice little trick, it is so clear that the words, even though they're, meant in jest, are in complete contrast with his actions, where that kiss is beautiful. And he clearly doesn't think he's just some piece of ass or whatever. And as Ilya leaves, Shane takes another moment to lock this moment in his memory and just sits there and kind of closes his eyes and like goes to hug himself. And I felt that at least that night, Shane got everything that he's been hoping for, which I'm all for. And that he, at least in this moment, feels safe, I guess. I wouldn't even say confident. He feels safe with Ilya and where this thing is at. We now fast forward to the Winter Olympics. We're in 2014. They're in Sochi, Russia. And unfortunately, Ilya and team were knocked out very early on. And so we get a glimpse of an interview where Ilya looks very upset. And which, of course, Shane is watching on his phone while at the Olympic Village. And we see Shane with his phone. There's the directions to the back door of his condo where we saw them last. I don't know if you guys can tell that the lighting has changed. I was just battling with a very full SD card that then I deleted all of the things and it still said it was full. Found another one in the back. We're going. Where the hell did I leave off? Oh, so we have Shane in the Olympic Village. Obviously, we saw that Ilya didn't make it through, and he's in a cafe and about to text Ilya just to check in on him. And again, we can see from his phone that the last time that they had interacted via text was right before they got together in Montreal. We get two of his friends from the league, Scott Hunter and the other character that I can't remember his name, surprising the hell out of him and jumping on him even though he's got headphones on, which is like never a good thing for me, just in case we ever interact in the world. My mom is jumpy and you scare her, and she grew up on like the south side of Chicago, so she throws a fist. She doesn't like scream. And I've got a little bit of that in me, that like if someone comes up and surprises me, I don't mean to hit you, but that's going to be my first response. Either way, we get them kind of bantering back and forth. They're, obviously excited to be at the Olympics. How could you not be? We also make a joke about the Olympic Village, which I think from all the Olympics that I remember, there's always been a story about how bad the Olympic Village was. This one, he's like, do you know that smell? It's like, is it black mold? I don't know. But they're going to hang out and go see a couple of we again get this, and they're looking at what they should go watch tonight. And one of the options that came up was men's short form figure skating. Shane brings up that one of his friends actually is in that, so it would be great to go watch. And it was an interesting choice in the way that he asked if they would be, like for me, organically, I'd be like, oh, are you guys down to do that, or do you want to do something else? And he says, cool. And I don't know if that's just like a vernacular thing on my side and not his, but it's almost, insinuating like you guys are hockey bros. You may not want to go watch a gay sport like figure skating. And his buddy just says, hell yeah. And like mad props, to come here and be yourself in a place like Russia. Again, he's assuming that his friend is gay. And we get as I genuinely think this character is being genuine in these statements, and they're not untrue. We get the camera kind of panning back and forth between Scott and Shane. We'll leave it there. And as this other character kind of finishes their monologue, their tiny monologue, he says something, it's like really not safe for them here. And I think Shane has always known that that was the case, but I think hearing it, thinking about Ilya, he kind of gets a little like watery in the eyes and subsequently goes to check his phone again to see if Ilya has responded to him. We cut to the figure skating competition. I'm assuming that this is meant to be his friend, and all three of them are up and cheering and clapping with the crowd, and Shane's eyes are just darting all over the place. This is an unlikely place for someone like Ilya to be at, right? Like, we're in Russia, which adds, again, that like cultural layer of pressure and homophobia that is impacting Ilya and his ability to live authentically and come out. And he also just lost a big game and the opportunity for Russia to win at hockey, which is one of their like big things. Why Shane thinks he is going to magically see Ilya in the crowd, I guess wishful thinking, I don't know. But he sees him kind of standing up in the top row in the shadows. And thanks to closed captioning, he gets a text from Alexei that says, where the fuck are you? Dad is so pissed. Which then actually helps answer my question that I just had, which is, why would he be there? It's like, well, he sure as hell doesn't want to go home, right? So the skating rink, although not figure skating, obviously for Ilya, is almost like a safe place, and he is essentially hiding out there to try and, prolong the inevitable, which the imagery of him in the dark, in a place where he, in theory, feels safe, has the most stability and friendships and camaraderie, and even the main foundation for him and Svetlana's relationship revolves around hockey. His relationship with Shane revolves around hockey and the ice. Him being in that building, that brings him security while he's in the darkness watching someone who I'm assuming is out and performing a sport that would, in theory, draw homophobic attention, was kind of a brilliant choice. And we get Shane, going up. And now that we're on his home turf, and again, he's mentally preparing for the explosion that's to come, we get a similar yet not as heated interaction, kind of like we did at the end of episode 1, where Shane wants to go check on him. Ilya just like will barely even look at him. He is giving very short sentences, no, not here, go sit down. And I get it. There are many things and pressures that Ilya is feeling that are overwhelming and are making him retract. But the fan in me, who was riding a bit of a high off of their last interaction, obviously knowing they weren't going to be able to have that experience at the Olympics in Russia, we get Shane starting a sentence that we don't get to hear the rest of with the word we, and Ilya immediately shuts it down with, we are not anything. And for Shane, and especially as we, talked about earlier, him being on the spectrum and not potentially having the ability to fully understand all of the nuances of these interpersonal relationships, your heart just breaks for him. And equally so, your heart breaks for Ilya, because that once he is able to finally open up, we get to see how lonely and scared he really is and definitely was in this moment. But he is very good at cloaking that in his Russianism, which is 1,000,000% a defense mechanism. I can't say that I have never had similar tendencies before. Not proud of them. And again, we get a go away last name only. And I think because of the breakthrough that they had back in Montreal, Shane isn't immediately kind of turned off by the wall that Ilya's putting up. I think it also probably has to do with the circular thought, which is replaying what his buddy said this morning about, it's not safe here for people like that. And that he probably has been stewing on that concept all day. Also, given the context that Ilya's not texting him back, Ilya is now acting like this totally different person in front of him, really is wondering if he's okay. And calling back to the baby and the snake analogy from episode 1, Shane feels that something's wrong and he wants to understand and to, not that there's really anything he could do, but he wants to understand, and if there's any way he can help. And it's almost like he's reaching for the snake that's saying, leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone, giving clues that it doesn't want to be aggravated. And Ilya's just turns and looks directly at him and strikes and is like, no, I didn't answer your stupid, boring texts. Like, leave me alone, go away. In the, conversation leading up to that, he is clearly trying to give all of the clues. Like, I don't want to treat you like this. I don't want to lash out. Please take what I'm saying as truth and that you should go sit down, leave me alone, blah, 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 or I'm going to hurt you type of a thing. And by Shane caring, he got the fangs on this one. We are now transitioning to Russian life. We see Shane's dad again. He now has about 700 medals on his military jacket that he's wearing. And we get to see him being the not so loving father that he has demonstrated himself to be up until this point. We then get dialogue that continues to color in the importance of the cultural dichotomy that Shane and Ilya come from and live in. And we get, his dad saying, they teach you, in America, they teach you no discipline. And that's why now you're playing sloppy and blah, 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 blah. And it calls back to actually draft day when he was talking with Ilya and the head of the Boston team that he was going to, and him saying, well, hopefully you can make something out of him. He's kind of lazy and all this stuff. And he was the number 1 draft pick. Also, Ilya, from everything we've seen, is not lazy at all. But it just demonstrates the father-son dynamic that clearly Ilya has grown up with and is used to and is accustomed to, which is berating and not warm and not loving and somewhat vicious. And we learn more later on about his mom, and that it becomes apparent throughout this season that he really is deep down loving, but just has a very strong outward protective shell, and has had to form that because of the lack of a caring and loving paternal figure in his life. And we get his dad kind of clocking some of the language and things that he's using, kind of calling out that you are turning into an American, which I'm going to say ultimately has been a great thing for Ilya in breaking this cultural cycle and starting to immerse himself, even though probably not consciously. He has started the defrosting process. We've got a lot of ways to go still, but that seeing him on his home turf in the environment that maybe developed some of the negative characteristics that we've seen. It almost sets the spectrum of like Ilya at home in the summer, because that's when he has the opportunity to go home. It's not a break. It's actually the worst end of his year. And then the best side of that spectrum from what we've seen is when he's been able to, behind closed doors, connect with Shane. And we are reminded that Shane's dad is definitely dealing with memory problems. Call back to when he was on the phone with Alexei in episode 1 and says, Dad asked me when I was going to bring bread home. And he's clearly in the US and not home. He also, in this scene, can't remember who Ilya lost to, and it was Latvia. He also goes into this, question about who tied this bow tie for you? Your mother. And Ilya has to remind him that his mom is dead. We know from future episodes she has been for quite some time. And something that you actually see quite a bit with early to mid-stage Alzheimer's. I have an MD, by the way, and actually was in neurocritical care research for a number of years, is that they are still able to recover once they are caught in a memory slip. They're not going to double down in that moment. They will make an excuse or, come up with another storyline. And it's this like in between where they are losing memory, but still have enough cognitive awareness and power to understand A, it's not normal that they don't remember that. B, there is a perception then from the other person that you just said that to, that you may be losing it, X, Y, and Z. But also then C, they can pivot to something else. And in this moment, Ilya's dad says, "Oh, no, your stepmother." And we don't see her at all. And even then, it's like Ilya helps him fill in the blank of like, well, where is she? She's in Moscow, right? And another important thing is that when Ilya asks about where is Paulina, who is his stepmom, his dad doesn't know. And obviously Ilya's home, so he would have seen her, most likely, which really means that his dad is at home alone with the memory problems that we're beginning to uncover, which obviously concerns Ilya. And the way that he feeds the plans back to his dad, even though his dad had just said them earlier in this clip, we should go to the gala so I can meet the minister. And the way that his dad's face kind of reacts, you can tell that even potentially in that short time frame, he had already forgotten some of those components, which really highlights the severity of kind of where his neuro health is at this point. We then get a through line continuation of the conversation we just saw. This time, they're not talking directly about Ilya, but talking about another player that had gone to the US and how, he's turned American. He's turned his back on Russia and has gone to the West, and how negatively they view those decisions and things like that. And Ilya's just standing there zoned out, almost like numb, because I think there's a part of him in an alternate storyline just totally embrace this new life that he could have. I think Shane's a component of that, but even more broadly, just not having to be berated or act a certain way that is unnatural for him because he's forced to do that in his family. And then I think there is a very clear parallel between that and the broader culture that he represents. And then we get our girl, Svetlana, to save the day. She comes up and interrupts the conversation and goes and takes Ilya away from the mind-numbing BS that he was just dealing with. And even as they're walking away, Ilya's dad and believe that's Svetlana's dad, make a comment about she's always leading him around, ever since they were kids. And up until this point, we've only seen very little of Svetlana. It was mainly when she surprised Ilya after the game was canceled back in episode 1. And it was evident, I think, at that point that they clearly have a physical connection, but we didn't fully understand the extent of their friendship, and that really they've known each other for so long. She will continue to demonstrate how big of a role she plays in Ilya's life. But this is our first kind of sneak peek into the depth, I guess, of their relationship. She takes him down to this like giant bathroom. Everything is, opulent, and we get to officially meet Sasha. So this is the boy that Ilya had experimented with back in his younger years. Sasha was the son of Ilya's hockey coach, and you can tell that they are very different people. I mean, just in the wardrobe choices and the mannerisms and all these sorts of things. I think, again, hate to harp back on this, but it is an important component, I think, to why this series is resonating and is so different from everything else we've seen. A traditional gay male romance, in theory, you would have someone like Ilya and someone like Sasha, right? Ilya is more of the stoic, athletic, macho guy, and Sasha is much more comfortable in playing with the spectrum of what is traditionally understood as feminine and masculine. He's got kind of this more flamboyant shirt, X, Y, and Z. And we come in and he's, doing coke or something off the sink. Again, thinking about bad boy Russian Ilya, it wouldn't be a stretch to think that, yeah, I'd do a bunch of drugs and go party and whatever. And we get a shot of, them relaxing in this giant bathroom. Sasha's in the tub with his feet up, with a bottle. Svetlana's having a drink. And again, highlighting the differences between, Shane and Sasha. Sasha says, I don't think you played that badly. And Ilya says, I would thank you, but I know you didn't watch a single game, right? Which is totally fine, right? I don't love sports, but when you contrast that with just like where him and Shane are at, right? They both are professional athletes in the sport, but that we see and continue to see Shane watching Ilya's games, not from a rival's perspective, but more from he wants to watch Ilya play and see how he does from like an interpersonal perspective. We see then Svetlana stepping into this incredible, turn this back on. God damn it. I forgot to turn my ring light back on after we started refilming. All right. Hopefully this is a much better picture. I'm sorry, guys. I have been filming for far too long, and we're not even halfway through this episode. All right. We see Svetlana beginning the trend that we see with a number of female counterparts that will come in throughout the rest of the season, and that they are the voice of reason. They are the stability. They are the emotional support. And it almost flips, again, the trope that we're used to seeing where the main character is the female and their quirky, queer counterpart is there for them when they're having, emotional breakdowns and whatever else. It really is the inverse in this show, which I love because honestly, I don't know, from my experience, it's kind of true. But we see Svetlana say, it doesn't matter who you lost to. Like you could lose anything and your dad is going to be mad. And you need to stop giving an F about what he thinks because you're never going to please him. You're never going to make him happy. And because she is so entrenched in hockey, again, nice counterpart to what I believe finds solace in, she basically gives him a readout of like, you actually have a shot at the cup this year and screw the Olympics. This doesn't matter. Like here's all the reasons why you and your team from Boston can win this year, the cup. And he's just like amazed, as I was. And while they're having this dialogue, we've got Sasha just sitting in an empty bathtub, taking another bump. And she even kind of foreshadows who they will be playing down the line. Clearly, he's impressed. We get a round of applause. And we get Svetlana leaving to go to bed. She says she has to look perfect tomorrow. But it's kind of insinuated that she had brought Ilya down there to do some stress relief with Sasha. And she says, I'll leave you boys to it to catch up. And while Sasha's going on and on and on, we see Ilya take a sip of the bottle that was in the bathroom. And part of me was like, don't just get numb and get off. That's not the solution for you right now. Please don't do that. Sasha is clearly interested, I think probably was under the pretense that there was something that was going to happen between them tonight. And we get almost a role reversal view of Sasha acting as Ilya does sometimes to Shane, and Ilya acting almost as Shane. And that he's taunting him and being like, you used to be fun, which could be a parallel to being boring. And Sasha kind of takes the lead and goes in to kiss him, and Ilya just is not reacting. And again, almost the Shaneism of it all. Ilya goes, here? Really? And it's almost like the panic and the fear that Shane feels being at home, right? And getting caught or being found out is the same way that Ilya feels here. But Ilya feels it here under very different constructs and potential consequences, and that maybe he is able to manage Shane so well because he also experiences those things, but in a different context, and in a context that and because Shane's world is so much less dangerous or scary, or maybe it's even just like it's more foreign to Ilya, he feels more free in that. And then we get this, danger used to get you going. And that's a callback to a statement that Ilya made to Shane their first time together when he was asking questions about Sasha. And despite Sasha kind of throwing everything he had at Ilya, he pushes him off and says, no, stop. This isn't happening. And almost in a Ilya type way, he's like, okay, well, fine. I'm going to go find a party, and leaves. And for a brief second, he pulls out his phone. I'm like, come on, dude. Text him back. Text Shane back. Send him an I miss you something. Doesn't happen. And we get our next jump to the spring of 2014, which is the Cup. Much like Svetlana had predicted, our boy Ilya and his team are in the championship game. Shane and his raggedy bunch of friends are not. They're over at Hayden's house, and half of them are in slings or in boots. They must have really had quite a year on the ice. And we get to see Ilya really doing the captain thing all in. And it was interesting because earlier, around the defeat at the Olympics and things, there was a conversation that was had as his dad and the other guy, I think is Svetlana's dad, were talking the theme of leadership. And it's not we, it's I. I can control the narrative. I can drive my team to success, even with deficits. Like, it's a me thing. It almost seems like he picked that up, and that may have been the thing that kind of shifted the trajectory of Boston as they are, fighting for the cup here. I also, in rewatching this, I was brought back to the press conference that we saw in episode 1, where they were asking Ilya about the pressures of bringing the cup back to Boston, and it's been so long, and the fact that in that moment something happened that triggered him, and Shane had to step in and answer first to give him some time to breathe. And here we are. Right, we've got this inspiring pregame speech from Ilya. He's pumping him up. They're in the finals for the cup, and he has broken away from whatever that was that we saw in episode 1. He's also broken away from whatever he was feeling and when we saw him last at the Olympics, and they are ready to get out on the ice. And as he says, fuck San Francisco. We see Ilian team get on the ice. The whole group of Shane's teammates are watching the game. And again, we get this, oh, well, Shane, you hate him the most. And he's still unable to hear those things without being caught off guard, at least initially. And they say, well, you hate Rosenoff. He goes, of course. And he says, he's the best hockey player, probably. And as the center of his Montreal team, obviously all of his buddies are gassing him up. And they're like, no, you're the best. You're the best. And Shane is just locked in. He is watching that screen, and it's almost like there's just noise around him. And Boston wins. Ilya is able to bring home the cup, and right as it's announced, everyone just kind of gets up off the couch, and we have Shane just sitting there staring straight ahead, and we see his lips kind of twitch. I couldn't tell if like he was fighting back tears at first, and then we just get kind of a one corner of his lips given, and he cracks a little bit of a smile, and you can just tell he's proud of Ilya and happy for Ilya. And we don't get subtitles for this, but when Ilya raises the cup, he's like, I did it, Mom. I did this for you, Mom, which is going to be an important storyline for us to continue understanding as we go forward. And Ilya just looks like uninhibitedly happy. It's like the mask is off. He is just relishing in the joy. And that clearly is affecting Shane. He is a little glassy-eyed. He takes like a swallow. And it's almost this like internal battle between I'm so happy for him and why can't I have this moment with you? And even a text at this point from you. Now we get to my new least favorite part of any of these episodes, which is another failed award show. We're back in Vegas for the MLH Awards, and Shane and Ilya are presenting an award together. They still have not communicated at all since the Olympics. Shane is sitting, backstage, getting ready to go out, being like, where is this guy? And then out of nowhere, Ilya shows up. It's an awkward interaction, no questions asked. And Shane, asks him, what were you even doing? Like, why are you late? Ilya says, I was busy. And Shane asks, with who? Which tells you where we're at with these two. And they're delivering this comical monologue. Ilya is just cheesing. The most like fake, put on, characterized version of what he would be like happy. And they're reading out obviously what's been on the teleprompter. But the most important thing is the friends you make along the way. Baby, Snake, Disaster Zone USA, these two. Hey, before we get to that, can we take a selfie together? And he says, come on, when will this ever happen again, buddy? And you're like, don't joke about that. Don't joke about that. I get why the showrunner put it that way, but don't joke about that. And Ilya goes to take the selfie and puts his hand, on the back of Shane's neck and runs his hand down his back and touches his butt. And that was all too real for Shane, which I completely get. And so after they're done presenting the award, Shane kind of storms off. And as he's kind of walking away and going through the tunnel, he's clearly on a mission. He walks past a couple other people that we don't really see other than like the back of their heads. And you can see him doing the smile and acknowledgement and whatever. And as he turns the corner to go down this other hallway, that's where the bathroom is, the lens kind of flares out and gets blurred. It is, I think, which you could parallel to like having a panic attack, like you're trying to get away from everyone and or the inciting event. You're trying to play it like you're not having a panic attack. And then all of a sudden, things go blurry. We see him, in the bathroom. He checks under the stall to make sure no one else is there and just is like taking a couple frantic deep breaths at the sink. And Ilya, who is on my shit list for the rest of this episode, walks in just like smug, stands there, puts his arm up on the like hand towel thing. And it is so obvious that Shane is not doing well. And he has the audacity to be like, chuckle and just be like, well, which rightfully so sets Shane off. And he calls him out like, you have not texted me back in 6 months. What do you even want from me? Why are you here? You only acknowledge I exist if there's a camera pointed at us and it's a freaking clown show. He asks the actual question. What do you actually want from me? I cannot figure out what the hell this is. I cannot figure out what sets you off, what doesn't, when things are good, why, when they go bad, why you text me and approach me for a certain period of time, and then all of a sudden you won't respond to me anymore. Now we're here and we're doing this thing. Like, say what you want. And being the dick version of Ilya that he is right now, he's like, I want you to S my D. I would have punched him I would have punched him in the fucking face. And Shane's like, you're unbelievable. So you know what? No, why don't you do that to me? Not in a way that he actually means it. He's throwing it back in his face at this point. But that gets Ilya's attention. He goes over and in a manipulative way goes and puts his hand on Shane's face. The thing he has done historically to calm Shane down, to make him feel safe. And he teases him. And he goes, maybe if you ask nicely. And makes him actually ask nicely. And still says no. And actually the way he's using this safe, intimate thing that they have done in this moment, the way that he's holding his jaw is much more aggressive. And we see how hurt Shane is. You can tell it. It's written all over his face. And in using that, doubles down, actually makes him ask nicely multiple times, still says no. And as Ilya's hand comes off Shane's face, we get Shane's face like following after his hand. Like he was using Ilya in that moment as a much needed respite from all the bullshit that's happened between them, and he wanted to feel safe in that, just like we've seen when they've kissed sometimes, and Shane just like almost follows after him as he pulls away. And as he's forced to ask again and kind of leans in to Ilya, it is not about S-ing the D. What he actually wants is a hug and a kiss and a text back and consistency. And just as Shane is like giving in to this moment, Ilya again rips the carpet out from under him and says no. And keeping dominant control over the situation, Ilya goes, nope, go back, watch this boring show, go to the stupid after party. And then after that, you will come to my hotel room and I will maybe do that. And in this moment, it was like Ilya did just enough that Shane was like re-infatuated. And even though I'm really mad at him right now, we get another Rosanov one-liner that lives rent-free in my brain, which is, so being boring is genetic. And Shane is lost in the sauce. You can just tell he is a deer in the headlights. And Ilya, I don't know if he can help but to react to seeing Shane this way. Says, you know what, let's make a bet. You win MVP, I'll do whatever you want. And Shane asks, well, what if you win? And kisses him and doesn't answer the question ultimately and gives him this like tap on the face and just says, good luck tonight, and walks out. And Shane has to kind of like take a second just to compose himself and wipe away his tears. So erratic, these last couple minutes. And I'm not happy about it. As the party is wrapping up, Shane gets a text from Ilya saying that he's staying in Penthouse 1. And Shane shows up in his little tux. And we get a shot that very much unlike the peak of this episode, which was Montreal at Shane's place. We see the personification of the supervillain that Ilya is trying to be. He won MVP and he is just like dead behind the eyes. And the momentary softness that, I don't know, maybe peeked through in that bathroom with Shane is gone. He is, if we are doing the sliding scale between his mom and his dad, we are full papa at this point. And actually, the rest of this episode was very uncomfortable to watch. And we retreat back to this transactional and almost worse, like truly dominating interaction between the two of them. Shane walks in, says congrats, and the next thing out of his mouth is take off your clothes. Like we are falling into the trope that I absolutely felt safe we were not going to see, and we see it. Of course, we get our buddy, folding up his clothes like the good guy that he is. And the dead silence as he's doing it was fairly deafening. And the way that Ilya dragged that chair, I almost turned off the episode. Like, not a fan. And I get that there are times and places for power dynamic differences in role play and whatever, right? Like, I'm not yucking anyone's yum when it comes to that. It's that these two have no foundation. They have had one positive experience that then was tarnished by the subsequent months and months of time. We have, I mean, my main concern is Shane. He is not healed from the bullshit, and he gives in to Ilya in this moment, and it's almost like I would rather have them this way than not have them type of a feeling, which I don't like. And the directing Shane of what to do and the like animalistic looks that he's giving him and the portrayal of how it all goes down leads to the conclusion that I had anticipated. And that we have a awkward, dissociated view of them sitting on the bed. Ilya has given him his reward, which is the vodka, which he asked for before. And it's incredibly awkward. Ilya is looking away from him and purposely starving Shane of the thing he knows he needs the most, which is that tenderness, that comforting, that intimacy, that physical presence with him. And he is just sitting there smoking a cigarette, which he knows Shane doesn't like or approve of. And it is diametrically opposed to what we saw halfway through this fucking episode. And even in that, Shane is an exceptionally better person than I am because bro, he just used you as a slam piece. He used you like he probably uses all of the women that he hooks up with as he's on the road and doing whatever. He still brings up the thing that probably has still been circling in his mind since the Olympics, which is the dangers of being in Russia. He's like, wow, it was really something else there. And asks, so, are you heading back soon? Going into summer. This is the same BS we had at the last awards. Are you going back to Russia for the summer? Of course. And Shane asks, why? No, I'm assuming he's put, obviously, the dots together that Russia does something to Ilya. When Ilya goes back or is soon to be going back, the pattern is that he changes. You seem to be happy. Going back happens and you come back not happy. Like, why would you do something that seems to not make you happy? And he keeps pushing on it. Do you have to? He's like, there's no have to. That's home. And Shane asks the question, right? Like, is it safe there? And whether Ilya just wasn't willing to engage in the conversation or if he didn't fully understand what what Shane was asking. He's like, what do you mean safe? So Shane pivots and is like, well, are you, I guess, happy there? And finally, douchebag looks at Shane and basically just says, what difference does it make? And ding, ding, ding. I'll talk about it at the end, but I was getting the sense as we were going through this that he had given up on trying to be happy, on trying to evolve his life forward in an inadvertently Western way. And he's sitting here right now, having said that to someone who actually cares about him and his safety and his well-being and his happiness. And Shane says, a pretty big one, I think. And even though this was the least affectionate, loving night, I can't help but think back to their night in Montreal, that even when Ilya let himself go there and feel those things with Shane, he still, even at the end, got wigged out and left as things got a little too intimate, not around sex. And even this simple question of like, I think it does matter, which means I care if you're happy or not, flips the switch on Ilya, and he's like, I have to get to sleep. We have thrown this bus in reverse, and he just sits there, numb, blank stare. Shane walks in the other room, gets dressed, and Ilya's just sitting in the bed, not even in the same room. And Shane's like, I'm off, and it's like, okay, goodbye, Hollander. And my heart shattered for Shane. He went along with this, hoping that there was an opportunity for them to reconnect the way that they had previously in Montreal. And instead, by going along with the way Ilya wanted this to play out tonight, it felt like there may have been somewhat irreparable damage done. And we get Shane in the elevator, going to text Ilya, see you next season, which has been the running theme here. Next time can tie into that, but he erases it. It's like the nicety of, this is what I'm supposed to say, in the hopes that maybe this continues. And we see him type out one of the most heartbreaking things, which is, we didn't even kiss. And that gets erased. And he does it slow-mo, letter by letter, as if he's taking that and like physically shoving it back down. And it hits him that there's been a lot of ambiguity here, but this was one of the more definitive signs that this very well may not be a thing. I wish this episode ended at Montreal, and that whatever this bullshit was on the back half was another episode, because then episode 2 would be my favorite so far, and I could hate this non-existent 2.5 or 3. Per usual, it was an absolute wild ride. We saw them both lean in, smitten, just heads over heels, in the most subdued and reserved way, behind closed doors, sitting and smiling at their phones with, the hoodie strings in their mouths and these sorts of things. We saw them figure it out in Montreal and connect on a level that honestly probably scared Ilya, but fed Shane. And the kiss in the stairwell, the show knows how to make you feel safe and then just so rudely rip it away from you. And for me, the clear catalyst for Ilya devolving into the shell of a human being that we saw at the end was actually the positive reinforcement he got by leaning into the archetypal Russian male character. And why I say that is, he, after disappointing his father and, country or whatever at the Olympics, this was another touch point for him to be back in Russia that he traditionally wasn't. And all of the rhetoric around leadership, and there's no we, it's I, and you can't be soft, you have to drive your own destiny, you are blah, 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 blah. He clearly took that when he went back to Boston and was able to drive the team to the cup. And he was able to finally appease a city that is potentially a surrogate for Russia, right? He, I'm sure, got at least not berated by his dad and other people. And he did so by going to that place, by being the strong leader that is emanating the Eastern way. And when he won MVP, that was the last straw holding the slowly defrosting version of Ilya together. And that last scene between them was Ilya as his father. And I fucking hated it. I hated it. I would prefer that we never show anything on or around the MLH Awards again, please. And as someone who, at points in my life when I was younger, made stupid concessions for stupid people who treated me like shit, but went and gave me attention when they wanted something or whatever. If you are currently in a situation like that, I hate to like burst the bubble. The way that this story ultimately arcs is like 99.9% chance not how that's going to turn out. And I hope that you have more self-respect than to continue feeding that person in your life or those people in your life. Because love bombing and then starving, it's all manipulation. And I'm sure there's reasons and things, and that's great. They should really be figuring that out with like a therapist, and you don't have to be the play toy. So I'll get off my soapbox now. Yeah, probably two of the best scenes of queer love media that I've seen. And then I would have lit the hotel room on fire at the end. So that was episode 2. Thank God I know what happens the rest of the season, because like legit, this was another absolute dumpster fire. But I hope you guys have enjoyed watching this. A little less like intellectual and more emotional given the things. But yeah, we again have somehow filmed for 4 hours and 10 minutes, and I'm going to have to try and again cut this down to something manageable. But if you have made it this far, like, holy shit, thank you. What part stood out to you? If you want to hit that like, subscribe, we will have episode 3 coming as soon as I can get it in and out of Premiere Pro. I appreciate you guys going on this ride with me. Any insights that I missed, or maybe if you can like, you read the books or something and you can talk me off the ledge from hating Ilya in this episode, I will consider it. Probably won't change my mind. But yeah, hope you're having a good day. And I will see you soon for episode 3.